A popular message in some evangelical denominations is one that calls for revival within the church. The denomination that I was raised in, that is the Nazarene, would faithfully schedule a revival every year for which they would hire a duly recognized evangelist from within the denomination. And they would usually have special prayer meetings leading up to a week of revival, during which everyone was encouraged to invite friends and neighbors to attend and listen to what the evangelist had to say. I now think that what they were doing, or at least trying to do, was just to simply preach the gospel, a task which has been assigned to all disciples of Jesus Christ. But the Nazarene agenda had been set up in such a way as not to disrupt the real purpose in life that permeated the congregation, which was to go to work and make money. Revival, like Sunday worship, had to be compartmentalized so that it did not interfere with what really mattered, that is, making money. Perhaps in a broader context, any talk about revival, whether Nazarene or otherwise, is a convenient pipe dream about something happening spontaneously within the organization that you are part of, that will make the world take notice of your church, assured that the people in your church have something that the others lack. In some ways, that is a very noble dream. Some have argued eloquently about what the missing ingredient is: faith, love, humility, a hunger for the truth. All of those are traits which could, conceivably, lead to revival. But our problem is that the theory is preached in a framework that is guaranteed to undermine any true revival. You see, churches everywhere are populated by believers who continue life as normal, while believing that they have solved the spiritual problems of the world to a point where crowds will come running to their church to be part of what is often called a mighty move of God. But is this taught anywhere in the Bible? What does the Bible predict for the church of these last days? Is it a mighty move of the Holy Spirit? Is it revival? Is it churches full of true believers proclaiming the teachings of Jesus and doing many mighty signs and wonders? Or is it a falling away, apostasy, false prophets, and lying signs and wonders? You see, until we accept the painful truth that the church has lost its way, any talk of revival is just self-deception by people who are too lazy to walk away from the whole farce, letting the dead bury the dead, while we concentrate on following Jesus. That's really my whole sermon. A very simple observation, but one that is extremely difficult to get even the most sincere church attender to accept. People even write to me about forsaking all and living by faith, but they do so without the slightest thought that it may make them leave the comforts of their home, their church, or even their country to go into all the world to preach the gospel. Brothers and sisters, stop demanding that it start in your country, your town, your family, and your church. Any concept of New Testament revival is not institutional. It is individual. I recall the Nazarenes teaching that revival must start in us as individuals, and I did my best to pray that way. But the assumption was always that if it was genuine revival, it would not stop with me or you. It would spread to the rest of the congregation. But it never did, and I had to leave all of that. Look at the only real account of a revival in the New Testament. It happened on the day of Pentecost. Did it happen in the temple, there in Jerusalem? Did it even happen in a synagogue or two? No. It was not even a group that identified itself as being part of the religious establishment. It had already been determined that it would be the religious establishment which would most strongly fight against such a real move of God. And that is exactly what happened. That is reality. It's the way that religious institutions always operate. They love themselves. They promote themselves. And they brand anyone who differs with them as being heretical. Like Nicodemus, seeking to see Jesus late one night, they are happy to incorporate novelty into their routine, but only if it can be seen as coming from them. Now, the revival that happened on the day of Pentecost did include a sermon from Peter, but that came after the real reviving that the Holy Spirit brought to 120 individuals who were all in one accord. And what was that one accord? Were they united behind Peter? Were they looking for revival in Judaism? Were they even praying for signs and wonders? They had only been instructed to wait in the city of Jerusalem until they were empowered from on high, whatever that meant. But we do know that the power which they received on the day of Pentecost was for the purpose of being witnesses to what Jesus had taught, not only in Jerusalem, but in the rest of Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost parts of the world. Where is that happening today? Everything in the Pentecostal revival that started in places like Pasadena, California, more than 100 years ago, got sidetracked soon after it started. It gradually turned into the lying signs and wonders, like Jesus predicted for the last days. And then it morphed even more dramatically to the very root of all evil, the love of money. Such greed has taken over the entire movement, and yet people still pray for more of this counterfeit, rather than questioning the false assumptions on which it was built. I say, forget about institutional revival and develop an attitude which is more consistent with persecution, tribulation, and martyrdom. That is what the first Christians experienced in the years immediately after Pentecost, and it is what the last Christians will experience just before Jesus returns. Are you ready to pray for that kind of move from God? God bless you, and thank you for listening.